Tony D and Little Joan somewhere in the background, and this is your screenwriter's take on episode 4 of The Penguin. So let's get into it. Smash like and subscribe. Thank you for smash liking and subscribing. Check out my books. The links are in the description. Comedy horror in South Jersey. It's the Pineys, books 1 through 16, available at Amazon.com. Don't forget, Kindle Unlimited is free. Okay. As always, I'll do my non-spoiler review and then the spoilers. So, there was a lot of good in this episode. But, yeah, I can understand why one critic on Twitter bailed on the entire series on this episode. It's very difficult to like characters who do kind of extreme things, and that's kind of what happens on this episode. This is an episode that's focused mostly on Sophia and her background, and a lot of the show is getting into the rhythm of doing that. It's going back and explaining stuff that you saw in the earlier episodes, but actually the reason you saw it is explained. But it's not that earth-shattering in some respects. And overall, there's a couple of contradictions here that sort of don't add up when you think about them. And that's part of the problem of the writing. Again, I've been seeing a lot of memes recently about various shows and movies. And usually the meme goes something like this. Sorry, I got something in my eye. It's that picture of a horse that the back side is perfect and then the middle's okay, and then as you get closer to the front, like the drawing gets more terrible. And then the back side represents the effects, the middle side represents like the acting, and then the front side represents the script. And that's kind of the case in The Penguin. The script still doesn't live up to the visuals, the hype, and Colin Farrell's acting is all there is to it. It's not bad. Like, I would give the effects, the makeup is a 10, easily a 10. The look of the show is probably a 9. The acting is a 10. And I would give the script like a 7. Like, that's pretty good, but it doesn't match the rest of the show. And it could. It totally could. This episode actually clarified some things, but added some more, baggage that, again, future episodes might be able to explain and clarify more, but I don't know. They're digging an awful deep hole. All right, I guess I would give it. Like an 8.5. I mean, it's good. I like watching it. I'm not totally thrown by it, but I'm starting to get tired. Like, I'm starting to get annoyed that these little mistakes are starting to add up. And I'm worried that by the end of the show, I'm going to go like, eh. So I'm already like, got one foot out the door for season 2. So bringing me back is going to be, they're digging a hole for themselves that they don't need to dig, is what it boils down to. But let me get into the specifics. All right, that concludes my non-spoiler review. Now here's the spoilers. All right, so first act, we get to see the confrontation from the last episode. And at the end of the third episode, Vic saves Oz from being killed by the Maronis in basically what looked like the middle of the street, but I guess wasn't meant to be the street. It was meant to be the back of a restaurant. So the Maroni character, an older woman, gets out of a van with at least 2 goons, and they take Oz and Sophia at gunpoint, and they're yelling at him, and they're about to shoot him. And then Vic comes over. He rams into one of the bodyguards who has a gun. Oz, I forget. I guess he knocks the gun out of the hand of the other guy, or gets the gun, or whatever. There's a struggle, and somehow Oz gets away, and Sophia doesn't. And part of the reveal in this episode, which is important, it's revealed the conversation they had before Vic showed up. And during that conversation, Oz is exposed to Sophia as being a traitorous guy who's been selling the family out to the Maronis the whole time. So now that explains why Oz left Sophia behind. 100%. So that much was good. I like that clarification because I thought he kind of abandoned her a little too quickly. Now it makes sense. He abandoned her because, like, there's no sense saving her, and in fact, he wants to see her get killed in the crossfire. The Maronis, Sophia's somehow injured in the melee. I'm not sure if she was, like, grazed by a bullet or somebody hit her or something, but the Maronis flee the scene too. Like, they immediately leave. They don't bother to get Sophia, who seemingly ran across the street and pulled out her phone and basically just had enough time to call for help before she passed out. They just leave her be, which is weird. They should have finished her off or kidnapped her or something, or Sophia should have fell down like a flight of stairs maybe, and they said, oh, we don't have time to go down and get her. We got to get out of here or something. Something needed to happen. But, again, it's part of the weakness of this show. It's a small detail, but, like, they've hit so many good details. Why leave a detail like that out? Why leave the blocking out to the point in which, like, it looks like Sophia is literally a couple of dozen feet away, and the Maronis just leave her. They weren't going to. They were a minute ago. They were going to kill her, and now they're just in a panic that they have to leave. That doesn't make any sense. Like, what should happen is she should have ran, and maybe, I don't know, you could have had her stagger down some stairs or jump off a pier into the water, and they lose sight of her, and it's too late. No one's jumping in to save her, and she washes up on a shore somewhere. Something like that. But whatever. Okay, so she has just enough time to call Julian. Julian rescues her. Now, Julian is her therapist from Arkham. And now we get the backstory in Arkham and how she ended up there. Well, she ended up there because Alberto and her were both working for her dad. Alberto's an idiot. She's the competent one. And the father announces to her that he's going to leave the family business to her. Damn the rules. Which is a weird thing to do. Number one, it doesn't happen in a mafia family. It just doesn't happen. They don't leave it to the women. Now, that doesn't mean women can't be powerful members of mafia families. Sometimes they are. But they are the power behind the throne, if they are anything. Like, they may actually run things, but they won't be official maid. There's no maid women in the mob. There's just not. They don't do that. So, he probably, if this was the real situation, and you had a situation where a mob boss felt he couldn't leave it to his son, but his daughter really had a knack for this stuff, he'd probably arrange a marriage for her so she can marry some maid guy who would agree to just let her run the show. He would get credit and she would make all the calls. Something like that. Like, they would arrange it so she could do it. But they didn't want to get into that, I guess. I guess they're making her a strong, empowered mafia figure. Which made no sense. The part that did make sense was that Alberto, her brother, is the only one that sticks up for her during the coming bad times. And the coming bad times is Sophia suddenly starts to figure out that Carmine, her dad, probably strangled their mother and then made it look like a hanging, because a bunch of women at one of his clubs are dead, and then Summer Gleason, a reporter whose name sounds familiar because I think they actually got it from the comics, was putting together a story. She talked to the reporter, and then later the reporter ended up dead. So the father framed her for the murder. The various family members signed on to it and made up a bunch of stories about her so she could be committed into Arkham. Now, that part of it was a little far-fetched, because if the father had the power to do all this, he also had the power to shut out his daughter. He didn't have to throw her into Arkham. And he ends up, first it ends up being a 6-month thing, and then it turns into 10 years because nobody can get her out, because the dad's so mad and corrupt that he has that kind of power. It didn't quite ring true. Seemed a bit extreme, because not only did Sophia have no way of proving that the father strangled the mother, she didn't even want to believe it. Like, she literally tells him, I don't believe you did it. It looked like you did, but that can't be right. So either Carmine doesn't believe her, or he's just a jerk and puts her away. But this gives us the character dynamic between Alberto and her, and why she was so devoted to Alberto, which I did like, because Alberto is the only one that visits her in jail, and he's the only one that tries to get her out. But again, he was working for the father, and he kind of was still in line to take over for the father. So, it kind of doesn't make any sense. And one of the things they establish in this episode too is Alberto is the one that's calling Oz Penguin. He's calling him Penguin. Sophia defends him, and then later she gets mad at him and says, "You're just my driver, shut up." But the thing is, we remember from the first episode, Oz kills Alberto because he disrespects him, right? But they clearly establish in this episode, which takes place in the past, he was doing that all the time. He was calling him Penguin. He dismissed him. He was constantly disrespecting him. And Oz was only a driver then. So it's very strange that suddenly in the first episode, Oz decided, I'm not taking this disgrace lying down. Now I'm going to get really mad. Well, you're getting really mad at a guy that's been disrespecting you for years, seemingly. So I'm not sure if there's more to reveal on that score. Maybe there is. Maybe they're going to reveal that it was more than just the disrespect that caused Oz to shoot him. But anyhow, that seemed a bit much. So then we get the flashback to Sophia being stuck in Arkham. Julian, her therapist, was one of the doctors working at Arkham, and they basically tortured her. They kept giving her, not lobotomies, the electroshock therapy when she obviously didn't need it. They got her beat up by other patients, framed her for hurting other patients. She eventually beats the hell out of Magpie, although I don't think she kills her. She really injures her. There's a whole scene about that she, that now she's developed a temper. And then, then we just cut to the present day, where Julian has saved her because she called Julian just before passing out. And somehow Julian drove to wherever she was and found her in the alley and saved her. I guess it's okay to gloss over that. It's not super important, but he seemingly is just a psychiatrist. And now the big deal is Sophia's been given an ultimatum. If she doesn't go to Italy, as per the family's request for a while, she is going to be probably made to go or possibly killed. That's the implication. I don't think a mafia family would do that. They would just literally force her on a plane and force her to go to Italy. But anyway, she shows up for family dinner on what I assume is her last night in town, where she tells everybody she's going, and she makes a weird, dramatic scene that makes everybody uncomfortable, and for some reason they're all uncomfortable with her, right? I guess partly because of her stay in Arkham, partly because they've all betrayed her to Arkham, because it's revealed that none of them stuck up for her. They all wrote letters telling the state she was insane so she could be committed. So then she, her and the family go to sleep in the house, the big giant house. Sophia gets the daughter of one of her relatives out of her bedroom and tells her that her and her brother used to sleep in what I guess is the garden, or, it's like a different area in the house, or maybe it's adjoining the house or something. It's a place where lots of plants are. It's some kind of greenhouse deal, I guess. Not quite clear, but it is clear she's sort of luring her out with cake because the kid didn't get cake at dinner because she's up to no good. Now, what I thought would happen is she might go around and murder each and every person personally, but instead she somehow rigs the house with gas, and then everybody in the house dies except her, the kid, and one of the mobsters at the end, who happens to be, I believe his name's, isn't it? It's one of the Vidi's. It's John Vidi, I guess. One of the guys we've seen through every episode. The guy that was being blackmailed for having sex with the current boss's wife. Sophia kills everybody but him and the young girl, including her mother, I assume, who also wrote a letter, I guess. So I'm a little confused to how she could do that, number one. That she wouldn't kill everybody in the house, including herself in the garden room, but that's somehow immune to it. But the one person who she spares is the Vidi guy who they've been blackmailing, and she's going to keep him alive, I assume, to take control of the family and run it through him, I guess. I'm not really sure she could have done what she did with the gas. That seems to be an uncontrollable situation, right? Maybe what she could have done is poisoned everybody and somehow spared Vidi, and that night she goes up there and they're all dead except Vidi and the young girl. I don't know. So episode 5 now starts with, I assume, Sophia taking over the family now that she's killed just about everybody. I don't see Vidi listening to her, especially now that she's killed everybody, but to me, I would think, again, like, being a mob boss doesn't work this way. Yeah, you can kill everybody else in the family, but it doesn't mean anybody's going to listen to you or respect you. She still needs soldiers to respect her. And they could have made that happen if you really wanted to. And the only reason I say that is because this is supposed to be a more grounded crime drama. And this is the problem with the Penguin as well. Oz's character, he doesn't seem to have any allies at all. Like, not any real allies. He doesn't know any of the, like, he's supposed to be taking over the city too, but he needs more than him and Vic. He needs a crew of guys. Sophia should have some loyal henchmen who she cultivated. She doesn't have anybody except the psychiatrist, maybe? And maybe she had Oz, or she thought she did, but she doesn't really have Oz. So, okay, let's say you pull this off. You manage to kill everybody else in the house except the one other Vidi, and now what? You announce, okay, I'm in control, and Vidi's going to be the figurehead, or Vidi announces, he's going to be the boss now, and then it's not the way it works. The New York crime families have to approve of you, at least on the East Coast. So it's like more of a group decision. Now there are decisions within the family and decisions outside the family. It becomes a thing within the family if a bunch of your guys just suddenly up and die, including the boss. That's a real problem. They're not just going to accept somebody because they say, oh, okay, I'm the new boss now. Especially if that new boss is the one who killed, high-ranking members. So it's a bit dicey here if she could even pull this off. Even if the magical way she gassed the house worked. And like the fight at the end of the third episode, you could potentially clarify this in the next episode by saying, well, she had Vidi's room blocked off somehow, and she has a reason for keeping him around, and somehow that gassed it. I mean, I don't really see how you explain that makes any sense. But maybe the opening scene is them two talking, and first thing Vidi says is, how did you do this? And she says, oh, I made sure your vent, was blocked, and I gassed the rest of the house, so you were safe, and I was safe, and so-and-so's daughter was safe, but everybody else is dead. Yeah, I guess you could do that. It doesn't seem like they're heading down that path. So yeah, I'm a little annoyed by this show now. I'm willing to stick into the end, but again, how many millions of dollars did they spend on this show? And what are the objectives of this episode? Well, the objectives are to show you how Sophia ended up in this sad state of affairs, right? Okay, I like the characterization of Alberto. He seems noble in this. He's trying to protect his sister. Nobody else is. Carmine Falcone is evil and strangled her mother or whatever. And she pieces it together just at the wrong moment in front of him. And he's powerful enough to get her arrested, committed, thrown in Arkham Asylum, but not powerful enough to say, you're going to Italy, or, never speak of this again. Like, it seemed clear that Sophia didn't have any power back then either. She had even less power than she did in the current day. So, even if he knew, Sophia knew, what was she going to do about it? What she said to him was nothing, basically. She believed he was innocent, and something else happened to his hands. And these people are practiced liars. He could have easily made up a story and said, oh yeah, no, I had to clean the fireplace out. That's why my hands were all messed up. I messed up my hands picking up some of the logs. It was stupid of me. Like, he could have said something like that, which, some kind of plausible explanation while his hands were all messed up, and then she could say, oh, okay, they weren't defensive wounds then. You had messed up your hands doing X, Y, and Z. Whether she believed it or not, he still kind of needed her, number one. And number two, um, he had to waste a ton of resources committing her to Arkham Asylum and thereby cutting her off. Another thing he could have done is he could have said, okay, you're not going to be head of the family anymore. What I need you to do is get married and have a son. Because Alberto clearly is not cut out for this, and I plan to be around for the next 20, 30 years at least, so maybe my grandson could take over and I'll get rid of Alberto. So, like, that could have been the new plan. I mean, there's all sorts of things that could have happened, but, or you could have made it more important, or Sophia's reaction could have been different. Like, at first she says no, but then reality sets in that Carmine is the hanged man and killed those girls, and she confronts him on it and says, you're sick, Dad. And then he turns on her, something like that. She wants to get him help, and he just goes crazy and maybe even chokes her a little before he finally comes to his senses and says, no, I'm just going to have you committed in Arkham forever. Something like that. But, what they rolled out was okay. It just seemed a little over melodramatic. The stuff with Oz was pretty good too, because you get to see him as the driver. He doesn't really command any respect until, according to Sophia, he turns her into the boss and basically says, oh, Sophia, she's been meeting with this reporter or whatever. And that's why she ends up in Arkham. And then, of course, she blames Oz at first and then backs off and now realizes she should have never trusted him. I mean, that's fine. It's not a bad episode. It's interesting to see all the things in the Batman universe kind of roll out. They drop in Magpie, and that's kind of cool. But ultimately, the Falcones don't really rate much. And now that you have this sort of extreme episode where she kills like 6 of them, that's a bit much. It's like too much to cover up. It's not very realistic. And the whole appeal of the show, like, it was going to be a more grounded version of Batman. Another thing she could have done is she could have set them up for some sort of, situation where a bunch of Maronis end up killing them, or some of her guys kill them, because she should have some guys. She should have at least a small crew of disgruntled guys in the Falcone organization that are willing to listen to her for whatever reason. So, and again, she could have a husband that she doesn't really love, but that she pushes around, and he's a made guy, and then she pushes him into the seat of power and then controls him. That would be more realistic from the mafia standpoint, Like, there's a guy in control, but really it's Sophia calling all the shots. Just like Alberta does in a scene where he's like, I don't know what to do, Sophia. Tell me what to do. Which was a bit much, quite frankly. It would have been better to have Sophia say something like, what are you doing to get me out of here? And he's like, I'm trying, but, Dad won't give me access to the lawyers. I had to try to find one on my own. I don't really know what I'm doing, Sophia. Something like that. And then she just realizes he's too incompetent to handle anything. But overall, I didn't dislike it, but I'm getting frustrated. The level of writing just doesn't match the acting, the atmosphere, the costuming, and the makeup, which are just all such top tier. It's close. Another rewrite would have done it, and there are ways around this. I've given a few suggestions. being in the mafia is a very male-dominated thing. That's not going to change for a TV show. It's just not going to change. She could become the power behind the throne. She could become so powerful as a female associate that everybody's sort of forced to listen to her, but officially it wouldn't be sanctioned. There'd be no way. There'd just be no way. Just doesn't happen. It's happened in other gangs, other, organizations, not in the mafia. It just wouldn't happen. But again, she could be the power behind the throne and actually be the real, boss, functionally. Tony Soprano was never officially a boss on The Sopranos. He was the capo, and then he was the underboss, and then Junior was the figurehead. But he actually ran the day-to-day operations. The idea being that Junior, took all the heat off of Tony, who actually ran things. They could have done something like that, right? It could have been Sophia was going to run the organization with Alberta. He was going to be a figurehead, and she would actually call all the shots. And she would be able to manipulate him. Or another character. But they didn't go down that path. And I'm not so sure going back in time is really giving me much. They could have shortened some of this and maybe done more of the modern era Oz. But it is what it is. I will watch episode 5, and I still recommend the show. I mean, there's nothing else to watch on TV. There's nothing else to watch. It's still pretty good, Overall, I would give it, so far now, I would probably give it more like an 8 overall, because the writing is weaker than the acting and the makeup and whatnot. But that's still not bad. A B plus ain't bad. Anyhow, that's it for me, Tony D, and Little Jones somewhere behind me. Thanks for tuning in. I'll be back this week with more videos, and my next event is Friday, Saturday, and Sunday at Triple Oaks Nursery from 11 to 4 each day. That's going to be the big Black Friday blowout. And then, of course, we're going to have Thanksgiving right before that. Hope to see you, and hope you are getting ready for the holidays. Christmas is just around the corner. All right, we'll see you tomorrow.